watching Charter California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance. We are so glad to be in Redding, California today. It is a beautiful city in North State, California, and we are joined by a native son. His name is Starman. He is now the city manager of the beautiful city of Redding. Must be nice to be the city manager of your hometown.
You know, it's a really rewarding experience.
Right.
So I actually grew up in Shasta County.
Right,
in the
your home area.
Right, so I was able to come back here in 1991 after going away for college and working for the state of California. So
Right.
It's a real blessing to be back in Redding and to see those improvements in your hometown.
And let's talk about Redding and electricity. A lot of talk about water, but electricity is also a critical resource. You surely remember the electricity crisis of 15 years ago. We're not there. I don't think we'll get there again. But talk to me about your utility known as Redding Electric Utility, REU.
I will do that, and I'll also mention parenthetically there's a lot of connection obviously between the electric industry and water.
And we'll get there.
Yeah, particularly for Redding and hydroelectricity.
Yeah.
So, Redding is one of the, actually this is not as prevalent in the West Coast. There's maybe about 30 municipal utilities in California, but actually public power is very prevalent in other parts of the country, like the Midwest, for example. But California, not so much. Most of California is served by investor-owned utilities like Pacific Gas and Electric and others. Redding is one of those entities or one of those cities that we own and operate our own electric utility. And
what's the history of that? Do you know?
The history is it's interesting. Some of the reasons to do that still exist today, and that was the community back in the 1920s was really dissatisfied with the quality of the service, the reliability, the cost of that service, and really had some great foresight to say we can do better as a community and with public power.
It's interesting you mentioned that. We went to Victorville recently on our roadshow, and we interviewed some members from the Apple Valley City Council, and they are in a dispute right now. They're trying to acquire the private water utility.
Yes.
And it's a fight extraordinaire. You don't have to worry about that right now, because at least on the electricity side.
And Redding is very much a full service city in terms of electric utility, but also our own water utility.
You own your water
wastewater
utility.
and other utilities as well. So the folks in Redding were always had a lot of great foresight about that issue, and that's really served us well. So to hit all those marks in terms of today, Redding Electric Utility has a great record in terms of reliability for power. We're less expensive than the other service provider that serves most of Shasta County. So it's been a great resource for the community.
And let's talk about the diversity of your energy sources. You mentioned hydro, which is a great segue into the crisis we're facing today. Part of the power that you receive does come from hydro through Shasta Dam, beautiful Shasta Dam.
Correct.
Explain how the drought has impacted hydroelectricity.
Yeah, so I'll talk about that, and I'll maybe expand. I'll tell you a little more about the diversity of our energy supply. But with regard to hydroelectricity, that's a big part of our energy portfolio.
Right.
And so we actually, the city of Redding actually owns and operates a small hydroelectric plant at the base of Whiskeytown Dam.
Got it.
But by far, our primary source of hydroelectricity is from the Central Valley Project and Shasta Dam and other facilities. And so, with the drought, obviously a lot less water coming out of the dam, turning those penstocks, and so we are getting quite a bit less hydroelectricity.
Right.
What that means for the utility and for our customers and for our community is that hydroelectricity is by far our least expensive source of power, and we're getting less of it means we're going out to purchase or produce other forms of energy that cost more. So that's a cost pressure for the utility, and that's true for other utilities also.
But fortunately for Redding, like you said, a diversified pool of energy sources. You also have access to wind farm.
Correct.
Tell us about wind.
Yeah. So we have actually several different areas of energy for the community, and it's important to have a diversified portfolio so that when a drought year, we have other sources to backfill for that. And of course, there's an emphasis on renewable energy, of course, as a country and as a state as well.
We'll talk about that soon, for sure.
Yeah, sure.
So tell us about wind.
So for wind, we have a ownership interest in the output from a wind farm on the Columbia Gorge that basically is right on the border of the Washington and Oregon border, probably about 100 miles east of Portland. So we receive a significant amount of energy from that wind farm. So it's an important part of our portfolio. The hydroelectricity we talked about earlier as well. And then Redding's also very fortunate to have made a significant investment over time in our own power production facility here in town.
Let's talk about natural gas, for example, another part of that diversified portfolio. Tell us about natural gas.
For a carbon-based energy source, the cleanest of the carbon sources. So we have a very large and sophisticated plant here in Redding that really, for all intents and purposes, could make us self-sufficient if we ever had to do that for whatever reason. But on a very hot summer day in Redding, we reach a peak of about 200 in the electric world. The units are measured in megawatts. It's a term of art. And so in a hot summer day, 100 degrees plus in Redding, we hit a peak of about 250 megawatts. We have a plant here in town that's capable of producing about 200 megawatts.
Wow.
So we come close to actually being self-sufficient if we needed to. Now the reality is it's better to be
diversified.
But we have a very sophisticated plant that actually contains includes six different generation units that has a great amount of capacity, and we use that extensively during the summer.
And you also have access to coal, which
we
is part of a portfolio.
Correct.
Tell us about
so
it.
we have a long-standing interest or ownership interest, partial ownership interest in a coal-fired plant in New Mexico. It's actually near the Four Corners area. So we're one of many partners in that venture. The reality is coal-fired plants are a little bit out of favor right now. There's a lot of upgrades needed to that plant, and so that's one of the areas that we'll likely disinvest or spin off at some point in the future. But right now, it's an important part of our portfolio as well.
And let's talk about renewables, because as we know, under AB 32 and otherwise, there are certain obligations that California energy utilities must meet in terms of renewable targets. By 2020, 33% of energy must be from renewable sources. Seems like you're on your way.
Yeah, actually, Redding Electric Utility actually does well in that category. The irony for us is, we talked earlier about large hydroelectricity, like Shasta Dam as an example. And so if you include all of our renewable sources, including what's referred to as large hydro in the electric industry, actually about 60% of our energy is renewable.
Wow.
The irony in California, and there's a long and tortured reason for this I won't get into today, but the state of California does not allow large hydro to be counted toward that renewable target.
If you can, just give us a brief glimpse as to why, the politics behind it.
Yeah, really the issue I think mostly pertains to the privately owned utilities and the disparity between Pacific Gas and Electric and, for example, Southern California Edison. PG&E has a lot of large hydro facilities. Southern California Edison does not, and I think to level that playing field, they excluded large hydro to better level that playing field for the large investor-owned utilities. It's kind of the short version.
That's a perfect short version. So where do you go from here? Because we know that there are many folks that are looking to even accelerate the renewable targets, if not to 2020, to 2030. There have been discussions about trying to really push that maybe to 50%, and so...
A lot of emphasis right now in Sacramento with the legislature and the administration to increase that requirement. So I guess the good news is today, the requirement is to have 33% of your portfolio renewable energy by the year 2020. And we're well on track to make that happen, so we're good to go in that regard. 50% by the year 2030 is ambitious. We think, particularly if we cannot include large hydro in that calculation. So we're continually looking for investments there. As an example, this investment we chose not to proceed, but we're looking at a biomass plant that was proposed for Colusa County as an example of renewable energy. We're also looking at Redding, beautiful community, lots of sunshine, and so we're also looking at more solar here locally. To supply, not just for individual businesses or homes, but really to a larger scale project or projects that would provide electricity to the grid.
Tell us more about the solar potential, because for better or for worse, Redding can get hot.
Exactly.
And there's a lot of sunlight in Redding.
And we're fond of saying it's a dry heat.
Dry, that is true. That is a true statement. But still, how do you access the power of the sun?
So obviously solar has become much more popular as the technology improves and the cost comes down. And so the cost has come down for individual providers. We have a very active program to encourage our customers to think about solar in terms of rebates.
Do you buy back some of the solar energy from them?
It's not a major source, but yes, we do have arrangements for net metering with some of our customers as well.
Does that go into the calculation for renewables?
Not for individual customers. If we did a larger scale project that would provide energy into the grid, that would count. And so we're looking at some of those larger scale issues. One of the ironies again for us on the solar issue is that we're very supportive of solar. We have programs to help encourage our customers to move in that direction. But one of the ironies for us is that the electric industry is very capital intensive. It costs a lot of money to build all these electric lines, plants, and distribution facilities. And so, when you're not selling less electricity in terms of the unit at the customer level, it's called kilowatt hour. And so when you're selling less kilowatt hours, it's a really conundrum. How do you cover your fixed expenses? And so we're doing a lot of work in that area right now in terms of looking at our rate structure of how do we better cover fixed costs versus variable.
And you'll come back and talk about it?
I'd be happy to.
He is Kurt Starman, Redding City Manager. I'm Brad Pomerance. It's Charter California Edition.